Hello and welcome. Today, my guest is Amanda Efthimiou, a leader at the intersection of technology and law at Mike Morse Law Firm, the largest personal injury firm in Michigan. She's currently reshaping how their massive caseload is handled by integrating AI to break down silos and drive firm-wide efficiency. We will also talk about FireProof, which is a mastermind, and we will discuss why most firms are still terrified of the tools that could help them scale. Amanda, welcome to the Growth Switch.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Our pleasure. Now, you don't have a traditional law background. You come from a different world. So why don't we start with a little bit of context into what you did before you went into the legal space?
Absolutely. So, full context, I'm not a lawyer. I've never worked at a law firm before. And I think that's precisely why Michael Morse hired me. I come from a startup background. So, I've been working with early stage companies and tech companies for a very long time. After I completed my degree in neuroscience, so I was really interested in actually how the brain forms in response to stimuli, also a little bit of behavioral sciences. I brought a little bit of that scientific background into the tech world. And so previously, I've been working with product development in a 3D printing company, my earliest part of my career, so hardware tech, and then in fintech AI. So we were developing anti-money-laundering software for big banks using AI.
That's interesting. What was for you the switch from doing that and going into the culture of law firms, which is quite different from the startup world?
Yeah, so I find it a very interesting moment. So I've always really been interested in our relationship with technology. Technology is evolving very rapidly, but it's always sort of been there, at least as the layer powering the companies that I've worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really interested in human behavior and how it adapts to and grows alongside evolving technology. So I saw that from the beginning when we were implementing an entirely new way of making physical products using 3D printing. So at the time, that was a desktop size version of a resin stereolithography printer was a completely new innovation. Now, how big companies, engineering firms were reacting to that was something that I was particularly interested in sort of tracking down from a behavior perspective. So for me, when I'm attracted to are challenges where people are perhaps resistant to something that is new, but actually very useful and beneficial to them in the longer term, if we learn how to use it appropriately, and if we actually understand the goals that we have in using a technology. And so when I was approached by Mike Morse Law Firm, I said, okay, this is interesting. This is not exactly where I would initially go. However, after seeing that the legal industry at large is ripe for change and is one of the industries that I believe is about to change even more so with the advent of artificial intelligence, I really wanted to dig into that and also understand from the inside how people are actually feeling and receiving that information in order to transform the legal space and to transform a space. So I saw that when I was working in the fintech sector, AI was fundamentally transforming how we look at people's data and track data down and solve big money laundering issues. And so I said, okay, well, legal is another challenge, a whole different kind of challenge. However, people are still people. And so how they react to something like AI is something that I can maybe transfer over and apply into the legal space.
That's always interesting to hear that experience because for most business owners, whether it's a law firm or a fintech business, there is a sense that their business is unique. And always when we think about how to apply technology or how to change something else that might impact the business, it's a very common default response to say, yes, it might work for the industry, but our business is unique, or maybe our market or geography is unique. But you having the experience of helping that change in different fields, do you see that there are more similarities than business owners and leaders in those different spaces think about at the first point? Or do you actually see that once you took the challenge, it was actually very unique in a way how you had to go about it?
So, what the businesses are doing, the clients that they serve, and the processes by which they're serving those clients are unique. Finance and legal are different businesses. However, the process in which we look at the technologies that are being used now, the tasks and challenges that are happening on a day-to-day basis, and how we can apply technology to make it better in the future, that does share a similar thread. And I see within the legal space, even within legal, we're a personal injury law firm, so there's obviously many different kinds of law out there. We are, let's say, uniquely positively positioned to be working with something like AI because we do not have lawyers that work on an hourly basis, right? Our revenues are tied to won cases and
Right.
contingency based. So for us, AI is actually really supportive because what it does is it takes away a lot of that manual day-to-day task and allows us to do what we actually do best, which is serve our customers with the human touch even better. And so what I see is similar in that respect is the technology on the back end, as long as it serves the greater purpose of, for both of these industries that I was in, ultimately the human element, then fundamentally, yeah, we are looking at transition management in a very similar way, if that were to be sort of respond in that way.
What was for you personally maybe the biggest culture shock going from the fintech environment into the law firm and working through those challenges and helping them with the change management?
Well, interestingly, I think it was more the shock of going from maybe a startup environment where decision making is a bit different, the structure of the business is different, to fundamentally we're a law firm with lawyers. And these lawyers, I talk a lot about are using language learning models to source information, do legal research, but ultimately our lawyers at our firm are chat GPTs in their own right? They are wealth of knowledge built over years, decades of practice. And so what I find really interesting is maybe less of a culture shock, but actually what's a really positive change for me is that I'm working with people who are absolutely experts in their field in a way that perhaps in other industries, it's not as present for me. So the legal space, especially personal injury, plaintiff law in the state of Michigan, where we're based, we have to know absolutely everything about that in order to do our job well and to be successful and win cases. And so I have the privilege of working with lawyers who know what they need and what they want. And so my job is to make sure that I can still provide that for them, but in a way that helps us stay on top of the latest and greatest, in a way that actually supports a return on investment with technology that is real and that is sustainable. So for me, it's more also just navigating, lawyers, they know what they know. And sometimes there can be a bit of resistance. How is this technology, whether it's using AI or not, how is this technology actually going to help me? I've been doing this the same way for a very long time. Why does anything need to change? So there's always going to be that kind of attitude with any sort of innovation and sort of initiatives that come.
Do you think that's maybe outsiders get this wrong because there is a sentiment that having AI tools allows you to double into the field where you don't have the expert knowledge? But if I understand your point, it's actually quite the opposite. If you have the domain expertise, AI can accelerate what you do as opposed to trying to guess, which is a more dangerous territory prone to hallucinations and other issues that we've seen.
Absolutely. You actually raise an amazing point here. We are in no way trying to create mini lawyers with our AI technology out of thin air, right? We absolutely trust and validate everything that our human lawyers with a lot of expertise are bringing forward. And so even when we use any piece of technology, there's always that policy at our firm of trust but verify. So we are looking at every single piece of documentation. The goal, again, is for any technology to make what we do better, and we can be more efficient. We can take on more capacity. That's wonderful, and that's great for the bottom line of the firm. But we are not creating mini agents that will replace our lawyers for any part of the business.
I want to go to the trust but verify statement, but very quickly to close the loop on the differences between the fintech world and the legal world. What sort of ideas maybe you thought about since joining the legal world that would be good to take from the legal world and actually implement in the way how the fintech and startup ecosystem operates?
Yeah, it's interesting because with the startup ecosystem, we move at a different speed, let's say. Decisions are made a little bit more autonomously. Obviously, within my AI tech department at the firm, it is like a mini startup, I will say. And the the way of communications within, let's say, a legal environment and the way decisions are taken, which is really putting the client and the end user and the end goal and the bottom line of revenue from meeting those case wins, are always taken into consideration in any design build decision. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we lose that when we're in a startup environment where we build, we're experimenting, of course, and that is an amazing thing to do, but we forget our why.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe at law firms, particularly personal injury, where we're really there to for our clients who are sometimes having the most life-changing experiences of their lives, that why is very strong, always from beginning to end. And
Mm-hmm.
so I believe, the startups have a why, but sometimes it can get lost. It can get lost when you have investors. It can get lost when you're still doing product market fit, when the product is changing, you're doing user feedback, and you get really stuck in the weeds of a detail of how to build. Whereas I see at the law firm that North Star is there from the beginning to the end. And it's something that I really value about working, especially
Mm-hmm.
at Mike Morse.
I think there's a lot to be said about having that right balance, because there is a saying that no startups fail because of a lack of good ideas. It's usually the lack of good execution. And having that why that you're talking about, so that every decision, every initiative is taken through that analysis of should we be focused on that, is quite important. But at the same time, of course, for innovation, for the progress, to find an unexpected new ways to improve something, you also do need a degree of flexibility. What do you think is, let's say, a managing partner of the law firm that's watching our conversation is thinking about allocating some resources, whether it's time or whether it's financial resources? What do you think is a good balanced exercise between having a very clear why and focusing on what is needed for the mission right now, but also maybe leaving some of that room with a startup energy approach of experimenting and just exploring?
Yeah, great question. Anyone who's exploring bringing an AI to their law firm, mistakes are going to happen. We're going to move fast, break things, make another mistake again. Things won't be perfect from the beginning, especially when we're using something like AI that is also changing and adapting so quickly. Every single
Mm-hmm.
week, something else is coming through. And so I would always encourage managing partner to actually go back to the basic of how the structure of their firm is currently working. Obviously, if everything is working absolutely perfectly, I wouldn't stop there and say, we're very efficient. We might be very efficient because we have a team of paralegals, for example, that have been working at your firm for 40 years. What happens when they retire? How is that efficiency going to go? So we need to see by what measure are you working well, and where are places where the human in the loop could actually be improved to reach your goals. Most managing partners want to
Mm-hmm.
have more capacity so they can take more cases. I mean, maybe some law firms want to just stay as is, but if we're thinking growth mindset, there will always be an area where we can grow and adapt. And so I also encourage you to really have a look at the full operations of the firm and check out where the humans are and where they are seeing, where there's sort of the repetition and the administration is going, but more can be done in that realm. And that's where technology can plug in. And also, I would survey the appetite for technology in general as a whole within the firm, because
Mm-hmm.
AI is not a sort of tech challenge, AI implementation. It's a
Mm-hmm.
culture and people challenge. AI adoption is the real sort of lever of success. It is not the actual technology. If we were just all 100% going for what it is that technology can do for us in any area, not only in legal, it would be implemented relatively quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about the culture around why it's used, how it can be used, and how it can be used very specifically within a person's day to day work. and how resilient and amenable and open people are to adapting that technology in their work, that's going to be the difference. And so I would also consider, before even bringing in any kind of technology, really understanding your team and what might need to be in place before you go and you make a very big decision that's going to affect a lot of people, how it is that they're going to react to it, because that's going to be the driver of success.
I think that's such a wonderful insight, because most law firms are probably thinking that that's just a technology challenge and they're jumping ahead when, in fact, if they are not ready, it will not work. You have the experience from within the firm right now, but if you are hypothetically to advise another firm on being ready in terms of their culture to actually start adopting technology, what are maybe some of the questions that you would ask or a managing partner would need to ask their team to verify, yes, we are ready, or no, we actually need to look at our culture first, get that sorted before we even think about implementing AI into the way we do work?
Yeah, my first question, especially when we're talking about law firms, your managing partner, or in our case, we don't have managing partners, we have a CEO and we have a COO, CIO, that kind of structure. But whoever it is that's sort of with the vision for the firm, how ready are they individually? How ready are they actually to see their firm fundamentally transformed with technology and to make mistakes in the process and to maybe lose a little bit in order to gain some more? So my job can be done is happening. And the reason why I'm the first chief AI officer in a personal injury law firm is because I have a visionary CEO who is ready to take on AI and to take on technology. He's ready to make those mistakes. He's ready to take ownership of them. And if anything happens that could potentially alter slightly what's going on and maybe what the sort of external sort of vision is from the outside by clients towards our firm, some blips along the right way, which are possible, he's ready to take ownership of that. So that would be a first question, is to direct that question to the person asking, to ask themselves, because that is a big change and a big shift. I would also ask them to look at their data and to look at the types of data that they're collecting today and how ready they are to, or how visible their data is and how structured their data is, to be able to then work with that data to make different technology adjustments to automations. So we are a data first law firm, which I love, because data first startup, data first tech company, great, that makes a lot of sense. But a data first law firm means that we actually really do track how it is that we're doing in a way that is the reason why we have a data director and we have a whole data team that powers our sort of our reports. And so for a big part of my role is to make sure that we're working with data in a way that is ready for long-term innovation. So that would be another question, which can be go into much more detail, but not often something that people think of right away when they ask me a question like that.
Being able to accept that the first approach won't necessarily be the right one and there will be mistakes, I think, is so important, because there is a good reason for the legal profession to be risk averse and it serves its purposes. But when we go back to the idea that we need to grow the practice, we need to grow the business, there is a level of experimentation, whether it's marketing or technology, and there will be mistakes. The data point is an interesting one for me personally, because I understand the importance of data, and as a marketer, it's the beginning and an end to everything that we do. But recently that came up in the conversation that it's interesting to see, and there is a well-known example that came from World War II, when engineers were looking at the planes coming from the battlefield and looking where the planes had bullet holes in them. And the instinct is, well, if there are bullet holes, we need to reinforce the planes to make them stronger. But then the argument was that, well, if there are bullet holes in those places and the planes are still coming back, it's not the limiting factor. It's fine. And some lawyers made an argument that, yes, they have gaps in the knowledge of their data, but they were still able to grow their practice and thrive despite not knowing some of the numbers. And that creates two camps of thoughts about it. To somebody that is maybe accepting the fact that they don't know their numbers and they could do better, but also saying that, well, we've done okay without it. What would be the piece of advice that you would give to them, having the benefit of being in a firm that is data first and actually has access to the decision making that becomes possible with that data?
For me, I believe that data and the technology that supports the data have to exist together. And so if someone is resistant, or not resistant, but just they've been doing things a certain way without the data and they're fine, I would argue that in order to be more AI ready and growth ready, a willingness to explore what specific pieces of data can do for them would be very interesting to consider as a next step. I would say try it out. Taking on the startup hat, let's experiment. Let's run a sort of a test and start measuring a very specific piece of data that is part of the business that they want to like see and automate. And that might open up a couple more questions.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be data that would in any way intrude on the privacy of the individuals who are working, right? But you'd be surprised what can come from having data. And now then there's the question of a person on your team or from outside who is able to read and interpret it and ingest it in a specific way where insights can be made that are validated insights. And I see this a lot also in, we're prototyping a lot with AI tools right now. We have lots of data from very different sources. And this is another thing that we also face, which I'm sure many firms also do, is that our existing case management solutions, the products that we have been relying on and working with to a degree of success for a long time, they may not even be sort of AI automation data forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do their APIs and their integrations really support a very AI first business, right? So it's going to take time. It's going to take
Mm-hmm.
time for us to really see quality, accurate data coming from these multiple sources and to design products the way we're doing with AI that actually cross references that data and doesn't just give us sort of a linear static response based on one source, but we'll say, okay, now give me an overall analysis based on the 4 points of information that we have. Obviously, if they're a smaller firm, this might actually be a really easy workaround. Transitioning to a different case management system might not be as challenging as a firm like ours. So yeah, there's also a lot of pros to being a smaller firm that's thinking about this right now,
Mm-hmm.
because you have more flexibility and a way to adapt. I would, really encourage law firm partners to take on a little bit of that startup attitude if they're thinking about technology.
Certainly. I want to go back to a very important point that you made earlier about trust but verify.
Hmm.
I think you're in a unique position in terms of your work because you're working from within the firm, creating the department and thinking about the numbers. There has been resistance to the outside help with AI implementation for the firms because they say, well, you can help us with the technology that will create high volume of whether it's drafts or other documents. And then to make sure there are no hallucinations, you're creating more work internally for us to actually double check it. When you think about the approach from within the firm of trust but verify, how have you balanced the accelerating the possible work with the technology with making sure that the lawyers become more efficient without also creating more work for them to verify in their day-to-day activity?
Yeah. So, on the one hand, something like using a platform, which we do currently to accelerate document generation, let's say a case summary, right? Our platform has ingested case files and produces a case summary, which would have normally taken a couple hours. Now it takes maybe 20 minutes. Let me just
Mm-hmm.
give some numbers, right? A human still has to go in and read through that case summary, make sure that that's actually correctly, they know their case inside and out. So they're able to look at that, trust
Mm-hmm.
what's been output, but verify everything. Now, I see the fact that they've saved that time already as sort of a benefit in the sense that yes, more work is being added in terms of an extra step to verify, but the reduction in time accumulated over a number of different tasks actually creates more time to do that verification. That's what we're starting to see.
Mm-hmm.
It's a slower process initially because in the beginning, just from a sort of a change management, it's going to be a little bit more work at the beginning. So we don't take on more caseload. We don't talk about capacity at all until we've really gotten the system with AI, using AI in place in a way that feels really solid. And so I wouldn't say, I don't know if that's directly answering your question, but it's really like a multi-layered process. We don't just add AI and say, okay, great, AI is doing all this for you, so now go ahead. Next week, you can take on another case.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that what is being produced, which also people forget, when we work with a system that reads our files and is being trained by our lawyers in a specific way with specific guardrails and rules and templates that we upload into the system, over time, that AI is going to get better and better. So the beginning will be a longer process for you to verify and for you to sort of tell the model how it should be operating. So at the same time, while you're doing that, by the time you reach a point where you're saying, okay, I think this whole workflow has been optimized by 30, 40%, by that point, the AI has also been trained significantly more to be able to take on added caseload. So it's kind of like you're getting skilled,
Mm-hmm.
upskilled, and your AI is becoming upskilled at the same time, while always, always, always verifying at the end, no matter what.
And probably it's specifically interesting for the legal field because with a lot of smaller firms, whether it's generating new business because of reputation and referrals or just the way the practice is run, there is a key person risk, the person with experience, the person with the context. And I think now we have the unique technological ability to, over time, and it won't be immediate, but over time, to train the way the documents are drafted, the workflow organized, to actually have that person contribute to the firm ability to create AI that replicates their thinking. So without limiting to having one-on-ones with a time, more attorneys in the firm, they could talk with AI and basically have the insight of the person with the benefit of all the context and years of experience in a given situation. I just wonder if you see that also as a unique opportunity for the legal sector.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we want to do our jobs better. If that means having even more nuance about our client and catching inconsistencies in a deposition that happened in a way that we wouldn't have before because the AI is literally trained to do that, right? To cross-reference the file and find something that will actually help the case go forward in a positive way. Why not? That's where AI can really help us. We're always still going to need those lawyers who are architects. I see them more as being architects of the firm versus sort of the admin.
Mm-hmm.
But indeed, I do agree that over time, of course, the AI is going to be trained on that human knowledge.
For the smaller firms that don't have the internal team that is building their AI capability, what do you think is the best opportunity for both the law firms and maybe with the companies and startups and agencies that want to support law firms? What's the best place to start? Is it applying AI to marketing? Is it the intake? Is it the delivery? What do you think probably is a good starting point for a law firm that wants to get started?
It's a good question, though it's not so easy for me to answer because every law firm has unique challenges. Even within personal injury, there are law firms with different pain points that, different gaps, different areas where they're experts at, but maybe they have some challenges in another area. I wouldn't go for a specific department. Rather, I would go for a department that's already working actually quite well, which might be what you wouldn't expect. You would expect this part of my business is really struggling. Let's do some AI with that. I actually would go to the area of your business that is functioning, not because we want to add more stress to recreate the wheel that's already turning, but because that's an area where there might be the least amount of friction and change, adaptation to change using technology. So we want to go for a place where there's sort of everything is moving and we can find more subtle ways of bringing in AI. Validate those. We get champions within that department and then we can move on to an area that really is stickier. But we already have the lessons learned. We already have people in place that are already using that technology. We have a structure of decision making in an area that works that we can apply to a more challenging part of the business. That would be sort of a way that also from experience with Mike Morse. You know, it was very easy
Hmm.
or initially it felt very intuitive to just say, oh, let's go for this mega challenge. But I had to actually take a step back and say, okay, let's go to an area where things are going well, but here's where we can really amplify and do better. And now that we have the benefits of all that we've been through, we can go after intake, for example, which has, you know,
Hmm.
for many firms, it's a stickier point.
That's super interesting because it's probably comes as a counterintuitive idea, but AI can seem on the outside as the magic solution to a problem, but if you are starting with a problem you don't have the solution to, you will just accelerate the issues. And starting with the success and focusing on that is the better way to go about it. That's super interesting. In the context of AI and marketing for Mike Morse law firm, what have you seen as the good practices that genuinely helped without creating the extra flow, but actually amplified and you've seen the good results on?
Yeah, with marketing, I mean, that was definitely one of our departments where we saw success and champions early on. I think it's for many firms out there listening, it's our lowest hanging fruit. We're using AI most effectively because that's marketing is sort of across all industries, an area that is benefiting tremendously from generative AI. And so our team has been using language learning models for content strategy, content creation, mapping, making sure that the content that we come up with and that we produce gets out there more quickly and
Hmm.
can actually be adjusted for the engagement metrics that are coming in based on those posts. So we can just react more quickly. We can be more targeted with our information, who it is that we're speaking to across which platform. And so it also allows us to be more creative in a way, because I know that we use it to help us come up with new ideas and ways of approaching a very similar story. And that has been really interesting in a way that we've been very happy with. I would say best practices is to have someone on your marketing team get onboarded onto an
Hmm.
AI platform and to start experimenting with it, to not be afraid of asking it to help you create copy, to help you strategize, to help dig into existing data, marketing data, to see the holes that might be in there, where it is that we can improve. I see AI as a thought partner more than anything else. It may not do everything for you. You still have to make sure what you're writing is correct and in the voice of your firm, but it can definitely speed up the process.
One of the interesting comments about implementing AI for marketing recently was the importance of taste of the human in the loop. AI, especially if you have the conversations and documents so that AI really can take the voice of the firm and represent that well. The on the final stretch of before the submission, taste is still the deciding factor because AI can give you many options, but there has to be an individual that orchestrating to make sure it is given the best results possible. Have you found that to be true in the way you've implemented it?
Yeah, for sure. Especially because we have a visionary CEO, Mike Morse, with a very specific voice and a very specific way of talking about his business and sharing knowledge. And that needs to stay front and center and always has been before we even were using AI. And there's
Hmm.
nothing that I dislike more than reading a piece of content in any industry that I know is written with AI and has not been curated or adjusted in any capacity to fit the brand, to fit the mission. And so it's really important. It's actually more important for the marketer to become a curator of sorts.
And to understand that. With the things that you want to implement, but maybe you didn't have the internal resources yet, or it's technological limitations, what are some of the things in the intersection of AI and marketing that is a problem you're looking forward to solve in 2026?
There's intersection of marketing and AI that is a problem we're looking to solve. I would like to be able to use AI and technology in general to get more specific about real time. Let's say for us as a PI firm, we want to understand where accidents are happening in a particular region where we serve and get more real time data from that and have it
Hmm.
automatically feed into our marketing machine so that the people who are having the accident are being seen by us and reached out to by us right away.
Mm.
So that sort of real time, location based activity response for me is something that I'm looking at this year for marketing.
It's a very interesting challenge and definitely important because just as everybody knows the speed to lead whenever somebody calls, how quickly somebody speaks with them is absolutely the deciding factor more than anything else in how representation is chosen. Then being able to go even a step further and anticipate the need is definitely the next step. Amanda, I also want to touch upon the FireProof. If you want to just quickly talk about what it is and why it is important to you.
Yeah, so FireProof, for those of you who don't know about Mike Morse, so we built a personal injury law firm, a very successful one. We became one of the largest in Michigan and in the Midwest. And we are part of what FireProof does. And Mike Morse wrote a book actually called FireProof to sort of share his main insights on how to actually grow and scale a PI firm. What FireProof does is we have events, we have summits, conferences, and we have a mastermind where other personal injury law firms of all sizes across the country are able to connect with one another and really be not only learning from other firms about best practices, but learning from our FireProof coaches who have been there, done that, and been part of the growth of our firm and are able to share those practices with others. And so we actually find for technology implementation, this is especially important because if you don't know where to start or how to even go forward with AI at your firm, what better way than to talk to others who have actually kind of done that grunt work and who have made those mistakes already, and to do so with a peer, not a competitor, but someone in a different state of the same size as you who has the similar challenges as you. And so FireProof allows you to be in the same room in that conversation and to learn from others, especially around what technology actually works, what are things to look out for. So that's something that we really pride ourselves on having and offering for firms.
Definitely. I think the community aspect, especially because a legal industry can be competitive, but working with peers, not competitors, is a good approach to share what works and get further in business. Amanda, for people that interested in your work and the work of the firm, where can they learn more online?
Yeah, so they can go to our website, mikewins.com or fireproofperformance.com to learn more about FireProof. And me specifically, you can find me on LinkedIn, Amanda Efthimiou. I realized I didn't put my last name here in the video. And yeah, they're very welcome to reach out through any of those channels.
Then we will include the links as well in the show notes. Amanda, it's been a great having you on. Thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you, Alex.